how that all of our fathers, the congregation of Israel, were under the cloud, and they passed through the sea. They were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea. They did all eat of the same spiritual meat and drink of the same spiritual rock, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was what? Christ. The rock was Jesus Christ. And that rock followed them wherever they went, provided the water. He said before he left this earth, I will never leave you or forsake you. And he told us also then for us to believe in him and to be baptized, and you will be saved, and you will follow me, and I will teach you all of these things. And you will teach them to whoever you come across, so that they will know about me. But this is the same thing. And so this rock that Moses is getting ready to strike with the rod is the Lord Jesus Christ. He was smitten for our offenses, wasn't he? And he is the water of life that gives us to drink, and we drink from him, and he is with us all the time. So there's a lot going on underneath of this verse right here. So he called the name of the place, it says he did that, and the water came out and the people drank, and it says that he called the name of the place Massah, which means testing, but also Meribah there in verse 7. Meribah, Reeve, because it was the place of contention and the place where they forgot to believe and trust in God for the position that they were in. And so it was called that as a memorial for that. Now, I want you to slide with me to Numbers 20 if you're following along. If not, we got it up there, but Numbers 20. This is going to be like 39 years later. This is the new generation. Do you remember that God was angry at that generation and their unbelief? And Moses talked him into not just killing everyone right off and starting over. But he said, there's only going to be 2 that's going to cross over into that new, Joshua and Caleb's going to the new land. Everyone else, their carcasses is going to fall in the wilderness because they believe me not. So we've got the new generation. This is 39 years later in Numbers 20. And we got all of these young ones or ones that weren't even born 39 years ago who are coming up. That most of them never remember seeing Egypt at all. We had to get Egypt out of the mind. So now we've got Numbers 20. And the Lord again is at work leading them. And it says in verse 1 that they came, the children of Israel, even the whole congregation, into the desert of Zin in the first month. And the people abode in Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried there. And that's kind of a marker to tell us that the end of that generation is upon us, and we're getting ready to embark into a new generation. And verse 2, and there was no water for the congregation, and they gathered themselves together against Moses and against Aaron. We got another no water situation, and you know what it's for? Did you learn anything the last time? Did you learn anything from your fathers throughout this 40 years that I took care of you, that I'm going to still take care of you? Have you learned anything? Before you cross over the Jordan to go fight the giants, I got to prepare you for the battle. I got to get you ready for what you're going to face. Do you have any faith yet? Have you learned anything? Have you built your bomb shelter? Are you ready to go face the giants when you cross over? We got no water again to see what you're made of. Okay, verse 2. The people chode with Moses. They're back at it, aren't they? And they spake, saying, would to God that we had died when our brethren died before the Lord. That's a new one. I bet you've never heard that or never used it. Man, I wished I was dead. It'd have been better off if we had died out there with our fathers over these 39 years instead of facing this no water situation that I'm in. Folks, the no water is a place of testing to strengthen you for what you're going to face. And I don't like it, and I hate it, and I hit panic palace sometimes too. But when you look back, it was for your learning, and it was for your good, and it was for your strengthening, and that's why he brings you through the wilderness so that you can learn to trust in him. And it says that they're chiding with him, and they say all of that. We'd rather have been dead. Why? Verse 4, have you brought us, the congregation of the Lord, into this wilderness and our cattle that we should just die? That's kind of an echo of what their parents said, isn't it? I'm going to make a point on that here in just a minute. Why you hold them to this, okay? You get ready. Okay, so verse 4, why have you brought us up? Wherefore have you made us to come up out of Egypt? You got this? Austin, you ready? Listen to this. Why have you brought us here? Just to die? Why did you bring us out of Egypt and unto this evil place? It's no place of seed or figs or vine or pomegranate, and you didn't even bring us any water to drink. This is 40 years from Egypt. These kids probably never even seen Egypt, have they? But guess what they're thinking of? In the situation I'm in right now, I'm thinking of what? Egypt. You know why? Because my parents and my grandparents told me about some of the world that they used to live in. And it made it sound good compared to right now. You know, it's easy sometimes whenever Christians, we're going to come under fire for being Christians. And it's going to be easy to kind of say, boy, I'd be better off if I wasn't a Christian. Look, I don't see them persecuting those folks like they are me. Yeah, I'd have been better off if I'd have stayed back there and done what I heard that we used to do. They don't remember Egypt and its bondage. Why didn't the parents tell them about no straw for the bricks, the beatings on the back, the flesh pots that they really had to eat? You know what their flesh pots were? You know, peas porridge hot, peas porridge cold, peas porridge in the pot 9 days old. They had flesh pots that set up over the fires, and whatever they could throw in it, they did. And if they had lizards, if they had worms, whatever they could gather, because they didn't provide them with the filet mignons of the world. So there was flesh pots. Whatever that they could put into there, it went in there and got stirred up, and it's 9 days old. And I'm hungry, so I'm going to have to eat it. And that's why it's 9 days old. I didn't want it on day one. They didn't learn that. What they see is figs and pomegranates and things that they really didn't have an abundance of anyway. I want to tell you something, folks. The world and its delights and promises is more dangerous in the mind than it is in reality. Their enslavement in Egypt isn't as powerful as the enslavement of the mind that they've got going on here. You've got to free your mind of the things that you think and give them to Christ and focus. Your focus has to be in the right place. Why have you done this? They've forgotten all of the 40 years that the Lord's been taking care of them in this situation, and He's going to bring them through that. So then, we move on to verse 6, I think it is. Moses and Aaron went from the presence of this assembly, who was chiding with them again, to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. In other words, they went to the church building. They went to the tabernacle of God where God was. And they went to the door and they fell on their faces. And it says, the glory of the Lord appeared there before them. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, take the rod, gather thou the assembly together, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak unto the rock before their eyes, and it will give forth his water. And thou shalt bring forth to them water out of the rock, and so shalt thou give the congregation and their beasts to drink. And Moses went and took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock, and he said unto them, hear now, you rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand, and with his rod he smote twice the rock, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their beasts also. Here's where we got a whole new situation. You know, when you listen to the words of the Lord, and you read them, and you hear them, you study them, when I preach, you've got to understand the exact words that He's given you, because this is a whole different situation. This is 39 years later, and I want you to see what's going on. This ain't the 39 years ago when you strike the rock. How many times was Christ smitten for our offenses? Once. He doesn't go to the cross every day. He went to the cross one time, and He said up on there, telestai, which means finished. It's done. Salvation has been paid for. He only got smitten upon that cross once. Now, He's the lifted up Christ. He told Nicodemus, As the serpent in the wilderness was lifted up, so shall the Son of Man be lifted up. And upon that, then salvation is paid for. And now he is our high priest, and we go to him in prayer. We don't smite him anymore. We speak to the rock now. He doesn't get smote a second time. Now, the word for rock is a different word. It's Selah. It's a C like celery, but it's Selah. That means a high and lifted up rock. This isn't the craggy rock Sar 39 years ago. And that's why I say, this is when I got the aha. I've got to learn this language. Because to teach it correctly and to know it and to understand what's going on, I got to know what it really says. Not what the translators put in there, because it says rock in one place, rock in another, but it's Sar there and Selah there. That's the rock of affliction. This is the high and lifted up rock. And you don't smite the high and lifted up rock. You speak to the rock. You have respect and admiration for this rock. And the rod, look real careful. Where were they at? It says they went to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And the Lord told them, take the rod that is before me. The rod that is before me, where's that? That's in the Holy of Holies. In the Ark of the Covenant. Do you remember what's in the Ark of the Covenant? Aaron's rod that budded. This is the rod of blessing and salvation. This is not the rod of judgment that you smote the river with. This is a different rod. So we've got a different rod and we've got a different rock going on here. And you don't hit this rock. You talk to this rock. And I want you to know the grace of God. Even though he totally messed it up. You remember why he left Egypt in the first place? When he was 40 years old, what happened? He went down and saw one of the Egyptians beating on one of the Hebrews, and what happened? Killed him, didn't he? He got angry. You see, every person has some besetting things within them, and he's worked so hard. That's God said, there's not a more humble man now, because he's worked so hard on taking what his weakness is and trying to make it his strength. But this one time, that weakness comes back out. Instead of speaking to the rock, he speaks to the people. And he's angry at the people right now. And so instead of speaking to the rock out of respect, he speaks to the people. His focus is in the wrong place. That's what I'm trying to get. Our focus has got to be on God and the rock and not on the people and the things that's going on. He got angry. And you rebels, you stiff-necked rebels, why I got to deal with you all the time, and why do I have to fetch the water out of the rock? Man, the water out of the rock is Jesus Christ. And it comes through blessing now, not you fetching it or you smiting it. Amen. And so he smites the rock. You know, it says twice. I can tell you why. First time, nothing happened. God was trying to let him know, hey, this is an uh-oh moment, Moses. You're supposed to speak to the rock and not smite it. But he hits it again, and the second time the water poured forth, and the people drank. And that's the grace of God. Even though we mess it up, and we forget, and we dig ourselves in a deeper hole, God's still going to be there to deliver us, but we're also probably going to have to pay for it. He takes him aside, and he says, you know what? What you did, you lost respect for me in front of the people, and I'm not going to let you go into the new crossing of the river, into the new kingdom that I'm going to have over there. I'm going to let you see it, and I'm going to let you see my backside when I pass by. No one else has done that, but I cannot, because of who I am, my justice and my character. I cannot now allow you guys to cross over the Jordan with it. But the grace of God provided the water anyway, all right. Now, we've said all of this and used all these examples for something else. We're going to go over to the book of Hebrews, but I'm stopping in Psalm 95 on the way. I want you to hear something, how that 400 years later, we talked about how all these things are written for our learning. David, 400 years later, is going to write this Psalm 95. Oh, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker.